10,000 years ago, we were all nomads, wandering around doing that hunter-gathering thing. So why does anybody get into the back-breaking work of farming and work 60 or 80 hours a week? And the answer is to grow barley and make beer.
Brewing started in Pennsylvania really early, and it goes back to the 1600s. Pennsylvania brewers were much like the brewers in Europe. I mean, that's where their traditions came from. They largely brewed ales. Nobody really called them ales, they just called them beer. And we took to it. With the German background, they started doing it immediately. So that got big in Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania brewers were renowned. Frederick Lauer up in Reading was literally beloved by the entire national industry.
Well, between Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, there's a whole lot of history in beer, whether that's, founding fathers and their influence in beer, or the contribution of beer in war in Pennsylvania.
The revolution was planned in various bars around the city. One of William Penn's first priorities for the colonists to build before he arrived in the state was to build a brewery. So that was one of the first civic buildings, was actually the governor's brewery. The first lager in America was made less than a mile from here. John Wagner smuggled lager yeast from Bavaria and brewed in Northern Liberties. I do believe it was John Adams, who was from New England and was a big cider guy. When he wrote his wife once, he said, "When I'm in New England, I drink cider. When I'm in Philadelphia, I drink beer."
Pennsylvania brewers, as Pennsylvania brewers, had a major status in American brewing. Even today, we do pretty well. As the Brits say, Pennsylvania punches above its weight. We're not that big a state. We're certainly not that hip a state, unfortunately. But when it comes to beer, yeah, we are.
Coal had been discovered in this area. From Pottsville through Scranton in central Pennsylvania is the anthracite coal field. When they started mining the coal, they needed miners, and D.G., my great-great-grandfather, he realized this, and he also realized that Pottsville had a good water supply. It had a mountainous terrain for him to build his brewery because there was no electricity at that time. We beat electricity, and he found his way into Pottsville, and it was about 1,500 to 2,000 people at the time. But it was growing, and this is where he built his brewery, and it's still here today. Well, when Prohibition was enacted, they made regular beer but took the alcohol back out of it. There was a machine in there when I started called a de-alcoholizer, and they'd run the brew through this machine, and it took the alcohol out, and you sold near beer, which was less than 1/2%. But it was tough times, and at that time my grandfather wanted to keep his people working, so he built this dairy that we're in today, and to keep his guys working, because ice cream you have to freeze, beer you have to keep cold, and it's basically the same kind of equipment. So he kept his people working. He was good to his people. We are absolutely the luckiest company in America, probably, to be around for 188 years and go through the hard times that we experienced then. The people that worked in the office girls told me, "You better go to school because we're barely making payroll here." And if it weren't for my dad and his brother put an influx of money into the plant to keep it alive, we would have been out of business like all the rest of the coal region breweries. But it was scary, and I said, I don't want to go to school. I want to work here and run this thing someday. And they kind of chased me out for a while. But you know what? I got back in here in 1985, and we went from 137,000 barrels to 2.7 million, and we're still growing. So we're very fortunate.
Penn Brewery itself has been around since 1986, and that started with the flagship Penn Pilsner beer. It was founded by Tom Pastorius. It was the first tied house in the state of Pennsylvania, being brewery and restaurant in the same building. We are all, being myself, Linda, and Corey, native Pittsburghers. We're all from the area, so we are very aware of the history of Penn Brewery, its importance to the city, and what was happening and the feedback when the brewery announced that it was closing. So the opportunity to be part of bringing that back to Pittsburgh and have Penn Brewery continue to operate in Pittsburgh was very important to us as Pittsburghers and beer lovers as well.
I was the first microbrewery in Pennsylvania, and I was the first female brewer in the country. Brew pubs then were illegal. My husband had an established restaurant with wine and full bar, so I had to separate myself financially from him so that I could open up then the microbrewery. So my husband sold me a piece of land right next to the beer garden for $1. And that's how I started. Many people, especially locally, thought that, why is Ed Stoudt have his wife out tramping around selling beer? They really, because in those days, beer was in a man's domain. Men drank beer, women drank wine, or they didn't drink at all. But Philadelphia was very warm and very receptive.
We opened in 1990. At 18th and Cherry, and we were the first craft beer in Philadelphia. It mirrored every other place in the country where there was a vast sea of bland beers all around, and we couldn't find a wholesaler because when every wholesaler we approached said, why would anyone buy a $20 case of beer when they could buy a case of Heineken? You know, it was obvious to us why, because the U.S. economy needed help. Culturally and economically, we wanted to contribute, we wanted to make a difference. Our mission was to elevate the status of beer.
It's a farmhouse. It's a farmhouse ale brewed with a bit of ginger. Ginger is awesome.
It's just an exciting time. We've seen breweries that have been around for 100 plus years, and you have people that are white collar, blue collar, working full-time jobs, and all of a sudden they figure out how to homebrew, and they're in their garage and they're coming up with the method that's going to be their beer. And next thing you know, they have a few friends trying it, and next thing you know, all of a sudden they said, I'm quitting my job and I'm going to go for the American dream, and they start brewing beers.
So what inspired me was actually when I first started, my wife has always wanted to be an entrepreneur, and she's been interested in owning her own business. And as I started brewing, she said, you're getting pretty good, let's try to make a business out of this. So she gave me the goal of getting an award in every state. She wanted to make sure when I'm sick, when I'm not feeling well, I'm going to brew when I don't want to, because it's eventually going to become a job. So my first award was in June 2013. I then had a bad accident in July. When you have a near-death experience, you just want to live life to the fullest. And after seeing that, we've always had the dream of doing that and pursuing our dreams of opening a brew pub. So after something like that happens, it was just kind of gave us the fire that we needed, just to think that you only live once. Might as well never regret it later in life if we never accomplished it. So.
The most exciting time has been the last 2 or 3 years. Right now, things are opening here at a pace where you can't keep up. I do my part as much as anyone, but I feel like there's this tidal wave of beer that's overwhelming us. I can't drink fast enough. I can't try everything I want to try.
It used to be that when a new brewery opened up, I knew the people that were involved in it. They were either from the homebrew community, or they had brewed somewhere else, or came back to Pittsburgh, and I knew what was happening and kind of knew what their vision was for their brewery and new beers. Now, there's places opening up in areas outside of Pittsburgh. I have no idea who the people are involved. I barely know the names of some of them.
It's hard to keep track.
Yeah, and it's kind of our job.
It is.
And it's hard to keep track. I can't imagine what it's like for the consumer to try to pick through all of that and try to, hey, I need to hit every brewery in town. Like that's, you start that list, and by the time you get to the end, 3 more have opened up.
And, to share this new brewery and tap room with everybody, it's really a dream that's happening right in front of you. Cheers, growing up.
It has exploded just in the last 6 years. We've gone from about 100 breweries in Pennsylvania in 2011 to over 300 breweries today, and kind of fits right in with the local food movement that Pennsylvania consumers have been enjoying for a long time.
I think consumers are very interested in where their food is coming from, where their products are coming from. Especially younger consumers, I think, are very educated in that regard.
Just to see that generation that used to come in and just drink the cheapest beer they could, to watch them come in the brewery and like sniff a beer, a college kid sniff a beer and start talking about tasting notes. I mean, you can see how we've changed the landscape and changed it for better.
Opening people's eyes to the glories of craft beer. That's one of the most fun things, I think, for all of us. Somebody walks in the door, they're like, whoa, I've never been here before. I like name bland beer, and what do you suggest? And we give them some suggestions, talk about it a little bit, and they go, oh, that's really good.
There's still a lot of beer and shot drinkers in this town, and we're slowly, I feel like, making some headway in converting the general beer drinking population into local craft fans.
You do still have a large majority of people who are still drinking the light beers of America, and on our portfolio we have that light, easy drinking beer that we can introduce and then slowly start to get them onto the craft beer side.
Here in Mifflinburg, the craft community has changed. I think people at first here in Central PA were not open to as many beer styles, and I think with having a lot of other breweries and in this area and other brew pubs open, people are more open to IPAs, or sours are starting to get big, barrel aging, which we're doing, and people like to open their horizon, I think.
I think education with the industry and everything is continuous no matter what. A lot of it was educating even, our brew manager, or that like what a brewery entails or looks like. It's because at the end of the day, it's agricultural manufacturing. So it's like, but it's also this tap room, and like, I know a lot of people face this, well, it's just another bar, but really a tap room is way more of a third space, a community gathering spot, something that everyone can come to, and, you can have a suit sit down next to, just a guy that got off his shift at the steel mill, and they can have a beer.
We have all kinds of people that come in here and drink our products. So we've got, plumbers that come in that look like they just got out of a ditch. They're covered in mud, to lawyers that come pulling up in a Maserati. I mean, it's not just the younger crowd. It's not just, the 20-somethings that are graduating college that want craft beer. It's everybody and anybody. We have a whole slew of people that come in here and, at different levels of beer education.
Educating consumers is very, very important. I think it was more important earlier on because craft beer was undefined. I think in 20 years it has become more defined, and it has also pushed open new doors. I think that soft education is the key. Whether it's the self-guided tour here at our Parksburg brewery, or it's a knowledgeable server, you really can't expect to impart too much knowledge in one session. You need the experience of the product, the experience of the location, and the experience of the whole thing coming together. So all we can hope to do is put in great memories and focal points into people's lives, and they're going to build the picture themselves.
In the beginning, when we first started craft beer, all we did was educate people because they didn't know what we were doing or what, craft beer was. Now that people have an idea about craft beer, now we're getting more into the nuance of educating people, where we're showing them why it's good beer and why beer can taste different and still be good beer. Michael Jackson used to do the beer hunter, the perfect beer at the perfect place at the perfect time. I mean, that's what we're all searching for, I think.
I think there are a lot of communities around the country that have really well-developed brewing communities. You can look at Portland, Oregon, or Asheville, North Carolina, where they have a ton of breweries. But I don't think there's a better community in the country than Philadelphia.
Philly has had such a tavern culture, not specifically a craft beer culture originally, and I think that's why craft beer has taken off so much, is that kind of that tavern culture within the Philadelphia and the greater region. And people just love craft beer and appreciate great beer.
Philly, as you know, is such a wonderful beer town. It's got such a diverse and really highly rated brewing community. So to be part of that was kind of the reason that we came to Philadelphia.
I actually have spoken to a few people who've moved here from other cities, and they mentioned that they got into craft beer when they moved to Philadelphia, just because in Philadelphia we really make beer a really big focus of things. It's kind of like a European city in that regard, like somewhere in Germany or Belgium or Montreal, where just beer is always there, and it's a huge part of the culture here.
Yeah, the one thing to say about where we are, this is Bob's home, and you could be in a lot of places right now brewing beer for a lot of different people. You can be in San Diego, you can be in Hawaii. You can find a lot of people with a lot of money to have him as their brewer. But this is a very special community, and we love them. But I'll let you take it. Like, why are we here in Delco?
Because it's my home. I was born and raised here. I just passionate about. I think everyone here is passionate about what they do for a living. I mean, it's not easy to get up and go to work every day, but even the people that have a hard time doing that, they go and they do the best that they possibly can, and they're just blue-collared, hard-ass working people.
Pittsburgh's interesting. It's a great place. I'm, born and bred here, so I love it. It's home. It's always been home. But it is super proud, super blue collar, and craft beer is definitely new on that. So, the craft beer scene here is definitely growing, which is awesome because we're able to come in on a young point of it and help it grow and help guide it to where ultimately the scene is going to be, which is great because that means that we're influencers, and that means that we have a say in where and how things go. So people come and love being a part of craft beer, and I think that's the really cool thing about beer is that there doesn't need to be a lineation between producer and consumer, is that we can all be part of the same because we all just love beer.
The community itself is a bunch of characters, and that's one thing that I really love. So many brewers have an engineering background, some are artists and painters, and then it's the melding of those two sides of the brain that I think brewing really represents. So you also find that in your customers, specifically Dock Street in this neighborhood. A lot of our customers are metalworkers and artists, painters, musicians, anarchists, lawyers, doctors, and everybody loves beer. It's the common denominator.
I think Williamsport from the get-go was, welcomed us with open arms. They were excited to see someone take a stake in downtown. I always wanted it to be a gathering spot for the community, somewhere where open-minded people could meet and converse and enjoy a good tasting pint and some local food.
The community around here in York is very, very centered on drinking local, keeping it local, and making sure that the quality of products that they're drinking are on par with the growing trends here in the industry. So it's been pretty good for us here in downtown York.
we put up our sign to have a brewery, and there was like a lynch mob coming out. And realizing that from that moment where people didn't like you to the point where, no, it's easy to be friends, and it's easy to be friends. One reason is because of beer. And kind of it's like, just like buying someone a beer or giving someone a beer to help out with their charity, things like that. It's kind of brewing on to others.
I've always felt like the community has supported us so well that you kind of need to give back. And we try to do that. We try to embrace it. And for the most part, in terms of like our philosophy for charity, if it's something that's benefiting the local community immediately, where it may be people we know or organizations that we know or are familiar with, that's like the top of the list.
In Crawford, Erie, and Allegheny County, we say no to no one. We get involved in everything we possibly can, every golf outing, every charity, every benefit. We give tens of thousands of dollars in beer and merchandise away every single year because it's important to us to be involved in our communities. They are the ones that keep the lights on and allow us to do what we do for a living that we all love and enjoy. We need to support that and give back to that.
There's some things we feel strongly about, like brewing the SRT ale and giving some of the proceeds to the Schuylkill River Trail. We just think it's such a gem, and people that work hard and play hard seem to enjoy our beer. I don't know, it just seems to go with beer even better.
Us as a group, we've really found a lot of satisfaction in being able to help somebody else out, especially knowing that we're doing something that we love while we're helping someone.
That's one thing breweries are great at is, being a part of their community and having that social outreach. And honestly, I'd like to think that the great thing that beer has and craft breweries have is they have beer citizens, not necessarily just beer consumers. So a very, conscious group. And honestly, it's on brewers to move their customers and consumers up to being more informed citizens.
We just recently went through a change where we were donating to 180 different nonprofits throughout the year, tiny amounts. We talked to our staff in April, and we picked 4 nonprofits that all of us kind of believe in. Instead of giving out a million different small gift cards and growlers and things like that, we're going to actually do 4 big events and donate a more significant chunk to these 4 groups we believe in, which is really hard to turn away a lot of things you also believe in, but makes more of an impact on the local communities.
What we do is more about giving back to what we do. It's not about the money. It's not about all the pretty things that people think of in life. We want to enjoy it. We want others to enjoy it as well. And so if we can help others along the way, why not?
First got interested in beer. Well, in making beer or drinking beer? 2 different questions. Drinking beer, of course, I was underage.
I got into craft beer when I was 18. I started homebrewing when I was 18 because I legally could not purchase alcohol, but you can purchase the ingredients. And my dad thought it was a genius idea.
That sounds like a perfect idea. I was a homebrewer a little bit in college before I could legally drink beer.
Nice.
I was going to art college in Providence, Rhode Island, and was trying to find creative ways to drink as a young underage student. Cut that out. Edit.
I was in college, and I remember going to a party. Usually you had a keg of something absolutely disgusting.
Everybody was just getting the cheapest beer that you could get. If you could spend $3-4 for a case, that's what everybody wanted to get. And myself and 2 of my other friends, we were the only different kids where we'd be like, no, let's just save up a little bit more money and get something that tastes a little bit better.
There was a keg of Anchor Steam, and I remember it was a weird tap, and we couldn't find the right tap, and it was this sitting in a bathtub full of ice, and it took us an hour to actually get it, and then I finally had it, and I was like, oh, that's what beer should taste like. That's what I want to drink.
Well, one of my goals early on was to put more good beer into the world than I was taking out of it. And I had a bit of a backlog to make up for in college.
So then I started homebrewing seriously. I felt like, hey, I got a science background. I can figure this stuff out.
Well, biology brain, chemistry brain, went to college for both those, and it just seemed like a fun thing. I just never really actually took the step of doing it until literally I was just driving down the street 309 and passed the homebrew store a million times, and just one day just went, fuck it, why not?
It sounds kind of funny now because everybody who's a home brewer wants to start a brewery now. I'm like, yeah, you need to know a lot more than what you think.
I quit my day job without any firm plan, none, and then started working on the business plan for what is now East End Brewing. Not the sequence I recommend as the sole breadwinner for a family of 4. I have a very patient wife who also likes beer, or we wouldn't be here talking today.
My wife, God love her, she only knew what she was doing. She bought me a beer of the month subscription for Christmas one year, and like 75% of the beers that I was getting in this subscription were IPAs, and I hated IPAs at the time. But I also hate to waste things. So I drank them, and I'm telling you, by month 3, that's all I wanted to drink. It's great.
Oh yeah, I was one of those macro drinkers. Didn't even had my first IPA. I thought something was wrong with it, you know. Just learning how it was made me appreciate like the flavors that you can get from beer and start to like the stuff that used to taste awful to me.
What really drives a lot of craft brewers is the experience. You're not just drinking because I want to get a buzz. You're drinking because, hey, I might get a little buzz because that's always fun too. But you're drinking because it's going to be something that's delicious, something that you're going to remember, and something that you're going to say, I had this and it was awesome.
Let's check out here. A while ago, I was watching a show on cable TV about some dudes that was making whiskey in the mountains. And I said, how is this legal? I found out that was highly illegal and we can't do that. So the next thing up was beer. And I knew immediately that this was gonna be something special because every time I made a 5-gallon batch, it was gone before the cookout was over. I just saw an opportunity for us to hit a vein in a market that was kind of untapped because we drink beer. So if I didn't know what a craft beer was, how many people like me didn't know what craft beer was? Yeah.
Most of the people in our neighborhoods are drinking Coke 45s or Steel Reserves, and they don't understand what craft brewing is.
Right.
So we need to get the message out to them like, hey guys, we're here and we're staying here. Join us.
So what we want to do is we're 80s babies and 90s babies and stuff like that, the young guy over there. We like rap. We like Transformers and Power Rangers and Dragon Ball Z and stuff like that. We like Jay-Z. We like, culture. We want to bring our culture into a world that is not very diverse yet.
When those guys see us on the other side of the line and they see us just being genuine with the culture and also taking care of the craft beer culture, because that's a thing too. So if we can do both, then I feel like that it'll benefit everybody, because we have now introduced a different segment to craft beer. I feel like our breaking through is beneficial to everybody in the industry. It's going to be something special. It feels like something special.
Brewing education has always been something that I'm passionate about. I think one of the most important things I did in my brewing career was attend UC Davis and acknowledge the limitations of my own understanding and background. When I got to Davis, I discovered just how little I really, really knew about the intricacies of what's going on from a scientific level and a technological level. I think if you're really serious about what you want to do and you want to really make beer on a highly professional level consistently, having an education combined with experience is key.
Harrisburg Area Community College has recently implemented a brewing sciences program. We were able to partner with them and came up with the idea of, well, why don't we give them a space to design a recipe and brew the recipe and come up with the marketing of the recipe to train people not just about the clamps and the hoses, but what do you do with that product after it's made?
It's a fantastic program in that they are going to the breweries that will end up hiring the graduates of this program and asking, what do you look for in an applicant? What do you want these people coming out of this program to know? What's the most important thing? And by asking those questions, we were all, as a Pennsylvania industry, able to kind of come up with a curriculum that when we get applications from the graduates, we know that they're coming out with the skill sets that we care about.
The craft beer industry is ever growing. With that growth comes the realization that there aren't enough qualified people to fill the positions that we need. It's a burgeoning industry. It is replacing a lot of industry that we once had in the United States, and it is a creator of jobs. So we need to start training people to work those jobs.
Well, there's never been a better time to be a beer drinker in Pennsylvania, that's for sure. Just by the sheer number of breweries out there, I think we're at the highest we've ever been. And then also from a creativity standpoint too, everyone's doing different things. Well, everything that I just said as a positive is also a challenge. So it's by far the best time to be a beer drinker in Pennsylvania because there's so many great beers out there. And that also, keeps us on our toes as brewers to try to make sure that we're one of those beers that people are taking home to their house.
With this many players in the game, it's really hard to be unique and to come up with a brand new idea that no one's ever thought of, because we're dealing with a very specific product. I mean, there's so many different styles of craft beer, but at the end of the day, you're dealing with craft beer. So finding a unique way to brand that nobody else in a relatively crowded market is doing that, it's challenging, but it's also part of the fun.
The laws have been interesting. There's been a lot of change in that of late.
What's crazy is in Pennsylvania last year, our laws changed twice. We could never sell anything less than a case. Now we could sell 12 packs, and that was only around for a certain number of months before we could sell 6 packs. So finding trends in our current home base is a little confusing because everything changed. How many years do we have PA beer laws were static and then have them changed twice in a year?
It's wild.
Alcohol laws in our country are odd, to say the least. In Pennsylvania especially, there's a lot of old laws that just don't make sense. So each little change can have a dramatic effect on how we do business and how much beer we're able to sell and how many people we're able to employ here and grow this business and help this community.
One of the biggest challenges facing Pennsylvania breweries is distribution. We, as a small producer at 0 Day, have to look into, okay, we want to expand. And if we expand, where does that beer go? Who's moving that beer? Whose trucks are we using? And to implement an infrastructure to be able to self-distribute on the level that we want to grow to is very expensive. And I think that's one of the things that is really causing a struggle of growth. Because if we can grow, if we have a little bit more equitable option with our distributor partners, we can create jobs, we can create more beer, we can have a better presence.
One of the biggest challenges that we deal with is suppliers for anything that we do, just making sure that we have what we need when we need it. It's almost an everyday give and take between him and I of, oh, hey, by the way, we just ran out of 3-pound halves. Are you going to have, when can I get them again? And that was, we produced those based on what we thought, but now 3 weeks later or 2 weeks later, they're all gone.
It's just really a changing industry. We used to be able to get 1 truckload, but it'd be full of 3 brands of cans. And so now you basically have to get a full truckload, 53 feet by 10 feet by 8 feet of 1 brand. And so that alone is definitely a $25,000 check for every brand that you can.
The biggest thing we'll probably run into is lack of supply. And not by lack of supply of beer, but lack of ingredients, raw materials, hops, barley. It's all dependent on agriculture. We have a bad year one year. It's going to send a lot of people packing.
My area
of concern is more about the supply chain than anything else. You know, as more demand comes up, you're going to see a rise in prices of hops, grain, and all of our raw materials, really. In addition to that, when you see the large breweries buying up the small ones, they're intervening now into the supply chain.
So a lot of other breweries, you know, that we look up to have chosen to take an investor route and things like that, but we've always wanted to remain, you know, fiercely independent, and we have 3 kids, and we hope someday that they buy the brewery from us, just like the Yuenglings do with their family. And so that meant no investors, that meant money was hard to come by, that meant growth was going to be a lot slower than some of the guys and girls around you. So that's been a challenge for me, you know.
I think for us, we're a 188-year-old company. It's maintaining relevance with consumers. I think we've been very successful up until this point, but the challenge is to continue to put ourselves out there to new drinkers and show them that we are a fresh brand and a fresh company, and we make creative liquids, and we have a broad portfolio.
The challenge is they always want something new, so we have to remind them, well, have you tasted the Pilsner lately? Have you tasted the Scarlet Lady? So you constantly have to tweak them with your new style, but, you know, remind them of, you know, what is tried and true.
Packaging is radically changed in Pennsylvania with the change in the law. It used to be growlers were the lifeblood because you could go to a beer distributor and all you could buy was a 24-pack of beer, or as we used to refer to it, the 23-bottle problem. You buy a case of beer and you drink one and go, who wants some beer? And you're stuck with the rest of the case. Now you can buy singles in a beer distributor. You can fill a growler in a beer distributor. It's a brave new world.
We used to say, or I used to say on every tour, cans are good for soup. That's changed a lot over the years.
Well, cans are hot and craft, right? And so we decided to see if our customers would really like that format. And it's tremendous response from customers. It's a format that is convenient, you know, since it's not glass. And that's why I think it's kind of taken off with millennials. You know, cans had the stigma of being your father's beer, and craft has redefined can, and now can is the cool format.
Cans are so beer friendly. I mean, no oxygen getting in there, zero light getting in there. So it's actually the most beer friendly packaging that you can choose. You know, if you drop a bottle of beer, you're like scrounging to pick up your beer. You lost your beer, but you're scrounging to get the glass before the dogs run through it. But even at home, you can crunch them and put them in your recycling bin, and your neighbors don't think you're a freak, you know, because, like, you know, just dragging out bottles and bottles of a recycle bin, you know, I'm just saying it can happen.
I always wanted to do cans just because for me, I thought cans were cool. I mean, it's the same thing. There's a lot of positives that you can talk about in terms of like the marketing of it, and no light and less oxygen, and cans are lighter than bottles. All that stuff's great, but the real reason is like I'm making beer and I want my beer in a can. I don't know.
I mean, ultimately it's because cans are cool, and they're way cooler than bottles.
One of the best part for me is like the camaraderie of the brewing industry. You know, it's such an ancient profession. You know, brewing's 9,000 years old. So people that choose to do this for a living and invest like all their time and their money, you know, it's a very close, you know, brotherhood, sisterhood. And I still like pinch myself when like I'm on a conference call with like Bill Kowaleski and Chris Trogner, and you know, I get to shake hands with Dick Yuengling and stuff like that. So the best thing about craft beer for me is, you know, well, one, it's beer, and that's the obvious answer, and then two, it's like the camaraderie of the industry.
Well, I just think that Pennsylvania brewing is amazing. We've got so many innovative brewers here. We've got so many quality breweries in Pennsylvania. Many of them have become my great friends, and we're really a brotherhood of brewers that are working towards a common goal, and that goal is to continue making craft beer what it can be in Pennsylvania.
Meeting everybody in the brewing industry, it's just a really nice group of people. They are a laid-back group of people. Everybody's willing to help you. Nobody is judgmental. And honestly, at the end of the day, it's a business. Things can go well, things can go wrong, but there's always that great beer at the end of the day waiting for you, which makes it all worthwhile.
I think everybody's pretty cooperative. We're supportive. We're independent. That's one of the coolest things about the craft thing is that we're all ourselves doing our own things, but we're supportive of each other because we understand.
Yeah, we're all friends.
Yeah.
Like Voodoo, and you're going up to Erie and North Country and Blue Canoe. If you need something like a bag of grain, borrow it, and they'll borrow it and then replace it. So, we're not like at each other's throats. We're friends and we try to help each other out.
Yeah, we understand how hard we had to work and how hard they had to work to get where they're at. Everybody's kind of gone through the same battle to get to where they are today. Somebody posted on the Pittsburgh Brewers Facebook group, they had a glycol leak and lost 50 gallons of glycol from their system. Does anybody have any that I could get this afternoon? Because I've got 4 beers in the tank that are going to overheat if I can't cool them. And that post is just mobbed with replies and offers of help. That's phenomenal. I can't point to any other industry where your competitors are bending over backwards to offer you support and help.
None of us consider us competing against each other. There's really zero special interest in it. It's just everybody really are proud of their craft and also proud to be part of everybody else's.
The craft beer community in the Lehigh Valley especially, a lot of us actually came through here. Either here or Weyerbacher. It's amazing to see how many people will come through just a handful of places and then just expand outwards.
It's pretty awesome just to see guys go out and do their own thing, and Iron Hill does a phenomenal job. To lose anybody is hard, and it takes time to retrain somebody and money, and it's got to be hard but they do a great job.
Iron Hill has won medals each year at GABF.
Yeah, they've entered GABF since '96, and they've won an award there for 20 straight years.
Yeah.
So they know exactly what they're doing. They're doing a great job, and just to see anybody flourish in any job, it's pretty awesome. But they turn out quite a few people like that, so it's pretty awesome.
Bob and I were both at Iron Hill. He hired me on in the media location and trained me, and he left to go to 2SP. Andrew Rubenstein, who was working for me at Iron Hill, left to go with him. There's been a lot of Iron Hill people that are leaving to do their own thing. So yeah, it's almost like a natural progression. You go into something, it's like an apprenticeship. You cut your teeth, and the natural thing is either to stick with a brewery for a really long time, or with the boom that's happening right now, it's almost inevitable that people will be jumping out. So it's great. It's great seeing everybody being successful and pursuing their dreams.
It's great to see people going out on their own and trying to open their own places. We think of that as that they're motivated and creative brewers, and if we get 5 or 6 years out of them, that's great because they certainly contribute to us. So we certainly encourage that, and it makes us stronger and a better organization.
We have a lot of fun as a group. Brewers, getting together whenever there's an excuse to get together and drink beer. And I think everybody makes as many of those excuses as they can. And I'm fortunate enough to be brewing with somebody that I get along with very well. We share the same taste in music, the same taste in beer, and we try to make every day coming to work as much fun as it can.
All us brewers get together, we have fun. We talk about beer, we do beer events, we do things to promote the industry together, and we pick each other up. It's funny, we got a invitation the other day for a Stout's beer festival. When we first started, that was the beer festival to go to. That's the one you wanted to be at. There was the after party where everybody went and met each other and really became good friends. And this is people throughout the whole region. You had beer in common, and that was almost like being related.
None of us mind sitting down and having a beer with each other. We're all doing the same thing, so you'd think it would be more cutthroat, but in reality, it's a family.
Hi. Hello. I will take a Rail Trail brownie.
Okay. There you go.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
The thing about craft beers, it employs hundreds of thousands of people in America. It's been a boon to a lot of small towns. Elk Creek has turned Millheim around. The first time I went up there 9 years ago, it was scary. It was just a bunch of empty storefronts. And now there's There's the Green Drake. There's an art gallery that is working. There's a regular events hall. There's a veterinarian on Main Street. There's a jewelry shop. There's a coffee shop and a bed and breakfast. None of that stuff was there.
One thing that Pennsylvania breweries are doing for the state is generating a $1.2 billion impact on the state's economy. That's B with a billion. It's an industry like the beer industry in Pennsylvania, specifically the brewing industry, that needs to be embraced. That's 10,000 plus jobs.
In Indiana, we're blessed to have another brewery just down the road from us called Levity Brewing Company. We're fortunate enough to be friends with those guys, and I feel as though we really bring a lot of folks to the area, not only from Pittsburgh, but Greensburg, Johnstown, and even from nearby states like West Virginia and Ohio. You know, having two right here in town creates a little mini hub, if you will.
We quickly came to the realization that Indiana can stand to have two breweries, and we also make this area more of an attraction for somebody from, say, Pittsburgh, who it's an hour drive, and they might come up for one brewery to visit, but they'll definitely make a day trip for two breweries and a distillery 5 miles down the road.
We all know that tourism is good for all of us. We know that most craft beer drinkers aren't loyal, so we want to be able to, share the love and be able to promote each other. And I think it's good for all of us, and it really shows the spirit of the brewers, and especially in this area.
High tide rises all boats, and why would you come to Erie to visit one brewery when you can visit 11?
I want to see them be successful, because it certainly helps us, and the more success that some of the other breweries have, the more it brings people to this area.
I grew up in the Poconos, and I believe the hospitality industry is fascinatingly important. And I think we can do better one beer at a time with my local guests. And because Barley Creek is in the Poconos, my local guests are also some of those tourists visiting to some of the hotels, the water parks, the ropes courses, the paintball, the canoeing. If they show up here and I show them a good time and some great beer, they'll probably come back to the Poconos.
Beer tourism is when people travel to go check out a whole bunch of breweries, and whether it's going for a long extended weekend to shove in as many craft breweries as possible, or paying to do a tour where you hop on a mini bus or a van. And what's great is people are coming from out of state and staying in hotel rooms and checking out local restaurants. It's making cities in Pennsylvania destinations now.
So welcome to the brew deck. If you are drinking a Trogs beer, this is where it was brewed. It's a custom-made brew house.
One of the ways that we were able to grow was by opening up the brewery more and more to tours and showing people what we do every day.
And we noticed the more people that were coming in, we were also having more sales generally from kind of where they were coming from. So they would say, oh, we're from Carlisle, or oh, we're from Hershey, or oh, we're from Lancaster. And then you started hearing, oh, we're from Baltimore, oh, we're from Philly, oh, we're from New York. And as that kind of radius was growing, and as people were coming in more and more, we were kind of sunk in 15 years into it. We're like, oh yeah, if we can actually show people around that they want to have a beercation and come check us out, hopefully they'll spread the word for us.
We serve over 2,000 people a week, which is, I think, close to the population of Mifflinburg. So the brewery's really become just a destination. We have people that come from Maryland, from New York, from Ohio. Like, it's not just a local thing, but, of course, that's who we think about the most is our local community. So the real main purpose of the brewery was to bring something to this community in Mifflinburg, Pennsylvania, to provide jobs for this community. Paul and Eric own other manufacturing facilities in this area, and it was a really big passion project for them to give something back to the workers of those facilities, and then also provide more jobs for this community.
Williamsport, when we opened, was pretty much a ghost town. I remember working on the building and being outside for a half-hour break and not seeing one single person anywhere. And now it's really rare. It has to be very late at night or very early in the morning to not see anyone active. Williamsport's come a long way.
And more and more establishments are downtown too. Not only breweries, but regular restaurants, food trucks, all kinds of stuff.
Braddock isn't this dangerous place, it's a quiet place. Like I said, the population went from 20,000 people to 2,000 people. There was just
vacancy. Getting people to actually be willing to come down here again was the first step. And since then, I mean, we've seen 2 restaurants open in town. We've seen a metalworking shop come into town. And a lot of these people were like, we came to your spot and saw that it was possible and also wanted to be a part of Braddock. So that's really cool. And it sounds weird now, but there was just this energy here when we visited, and it's so richly historic. I mean, we've got art gallery, we've got the library, the first Carnegie Library in the country is in Braddock, and there's all these other cool things going on, and people, can come to your tap room and then discover the rest of that. Only builds for bringing our consumers and making them part of the Braddock community as well.
When they opened this location, Bethlehem was still kind of on the up and coming, wasn't really that great of a place to be. And they kind of helped spearhead the revitalization of Bethlehem. And they are also doing the same thing over in Allentown. A lot of restaurants have opened up. They opened up the PPL Arena, just a block down the road from us. They started opening up shopping, and it's just exploded from there.
In addition to the brewing industry jobs, there are the industries that support the brewing industry: glass, packaging, paper, agriculture. I mean, we're talking ancillary benefits of thousands more jobs because beer brings people together.
Deer Creek Malt House is the first commercial malting operation in Pennsylvania since Prohibition. Most modern maltings use a lot of really large equipment and make very large-scale batches using automation and machines. And what we do is make malt much smaller scale, but by hand. So we germinate on the floor, we take our time and really allow a depth of flavor that isn't possible without traditional floor germination. Malt plays a really important role in beer. I'm biased, of course, because I'm a maltster, but it really is the heart and soul of beer. You can't make beer without malt. But we've seen some people do some pretty interesting things, whether it's making more local beers, using some local hops and local malt, or taking some of the malts that are harder to get, like the oat malt and the buckwheat malt that we just made, and make a style of beer that they've never made. And that's really what we're trying to do, is get creative, listen to brewers and distillers and bakers, figure out what it is they want, what they don't have, and how we can add value to the brewing community.
Because craft malt comes at a fairly significant premium, craft brewers have to be committed to something other than price. And I think it's really important for brewers to understand that there's a big difference between big malt and craft malt. We can push our kilning temperatures to riddle out more flavor than a big malt house can, and we can actually tailor our flavor profiles to the needs and the interests of the brewer.
Part of the Pennsylvania Preferred Program is the economic development value of building the industries around our farmers so that we bridge that gap from farmer to consumer. It's equally true on the beverage side that, hops is such an important ingredient to beers. It's another one of those things that can have a very localized flavor and can really impact the taste of the beer. At the end of the day, you don't want to just go get hops every place that, the big guys go, because you want that specialized local flavor.
So there's lots of ways hops can influence a beer. First of all, hops traditionally have been divided up into aroma and alpha hops. So alpha is where you get most of your bittering content from. Aroma is where you get flavor and aroma from. There are some hops that fall in the middle as dual purpose. And then some people use bittering as aroma or aroma as bittering. I mean, there's no end to the creativity you can do with that. You have some hops that are more floral, some that are citrusy, some that are resinous, some that are spicy, earthy, piney. I mean, there's so many varieties out there nowadays. So it's very exciting to be able to grow and offer that product that brewers really want to see, to craft recipes around.
American Keg was founded in 2007. We are the only manufacturer of stainless steel beer kegs in the United States at this point. Brewers out there like to source local ingredients and equipment, so we're happy to fill that void for them. We're perfect for the small brewer, at which seem to be opening a few a day in this current market. So, and a lot of them are in Pennsylvania. We live in a state with a lot of beer action going on, from gigantic brewers, the #1 barrel producer in the country, to the small guy making a couple barrels on the corner. So we're happy to serve that smaller market. And of course, the ultimate goal is to be able to produce and provide as many kegs as we can to some of the larger brewers in the United States.
don't think we need to be in a bubble in craft beer. If you go back to the 1870s, we had over 4,000 breweries in this country. And so at that time, we had one brewery for every 10,000 people. If we kept on that trend, or if we got to that number, we'd have 4 times as many breweries as we have in the country now.
Yeah, the fact that there were 700 plus breweries in Philadelphia prior to Prohibition, like when you think about it in terms of the population that was here then and how, like what percentage of the population, that had to be, it's just insane. And so I think about that, in terms of today's market and the whole craft brewing boom. And yes, we're all kind of running down the road with this thing, but I'm like, I think we still got some room here. Like, I think if you're dedicated to your neighborhood and you're serving your local market well, like I think there's plenty of room for you to survive here.
I don't necessarily think we're in a bubble per se, because we're still such a small part of the overall beer industry, at what the low teens as a percentage of sales. So, as people start to really think about the beers that they're drinking, I think a lot of craft breweries hopefully can only grow. It is getting more challenging to grow because of the sheer number of breweries.
But when we opened up, it was a very similar song and dance where breweries flooded into the market and then didn't necessarily have consistent beer, didn't have great beer, or just didn't have great business decisions and then crash and burned. It's the exact same thing now. It's just then it was most bars and restaurants, especially in this region, didn't really know what craft beer was. And most consumers didn't know what craft beer was. Now they do.
I was in the first boom, the second boom in the 90s. There was another boom in the 2000s, and we're experiencing another great boom now. And I don't really see a difference in all of that. I do see a lot more innovation now than I've ever seen. And I think that's built upon the platform that we laid out as brewers over the last 20 to 30 years, and getting people to try different items. And so now instead of just trying something, they're embracing the next thing. And that all came from education, I think.
We started right before the first bubble. And back then there was a lot less people interested in craft. It was a lot harder to find craft beer. We were the early people in bringing craft beer and really educating the base that exists today. And so I think it was a lot harder to talk to people about craft beer. It's different climate now because there's so many people educated that now it's more fighting for shelf space, right, to get into the discussion about it. So it's a different way to get in front of customers. It's less about education and probably more about differentiation.
There were a lot of people in the 90s that basically came from Wall Street, or a lot of money. We call them the suit and tie. And they just thought it was romantic to have a brewery or a beer. So they went to a contract and they came up with a cute name, a cute label, but the quality wasn't in the liquid. The proof is in the pudding. So we survived that, but it was tough. We had decline in sales, and we had to re-educate, do a lot of beer samplings, basically get the beer in our consumers' mouth so that they would know that not all craft beer or microbrew beer is bad. Now, today, you can't open up a brewery if you don't have a person that the quality to know how to brew beer, number one, and you better have good liquid, because the consumers are very savvy and they know what they like and they know what they don't like.
I think we are heading into some times that could be difficult for growth and for certain brewery models. I don't see a bubble bursting. I see something actually that makes me sadder. I don't see anything cataclysmic like that. I see essentially a glass that's being overfilled. There's more effort, more creativity, more interest being poured into a glass that consumers aren't drinking to the level of new entrants coming in. And so what happens over that edge is considered wasted effort, wasted creativity. And that's sort of my fear, that not everyone entering this is going to get the opportunity to live the full potential, because we're a little bit oversupplied. But by working together, we can of course create a culture where more and more consumers are encouraged to move away from the larger industrial beers, the beers that don't have character, to discover happiness in these beers.
I think the number one thing of staying relevant is producing quality beer. I think the second thing then is to be innovative. You know, what are some of the things out there, and get new stuff in front of customers.
Is that your lemongrass?
Yeah, lemongrass and coriander.
The biggest thing for us is don't get stagnant. Look at bars and restaurants nowadays. What used to be 4 draft lines or 6 draft lines has now been taken over by 24 lines, 30 lines, 36 lines, because people always want something new. People want something fresh. That's just the nature of the business in the craft beer industry. We put out 2 to 3 new beers every single month just for distribution, let alone the 2 to 3, 4 new beers every single week that we do for in-house sales. We not only brew stuff that we love to drink, but we brew stuff that we don't like to drink. And that gives us the opportunity to reach every single demographic and every target market that we could potentially want to reach with the beers that we're making here.
We've changed our philosophy on relevancy just in the past 3 years, just because of how exciting and changing the market is. If you talk to some people, they're going to say it's have your thing that you do really, really great. Do barrel aging really, really great, or do sours really great, or do any IPAs really great. We kind of don't believe in that philosophy necessarily. We feel like we can do any of those styles great, and we don't have to make a niche or carve a niche that way. So, I view us as making our niche just really great quality and consistency.
For us, at least, staying relevant means being really good. It's not following trends. Obviously, you have to make what people want to drink, but it is amazing when we brew certain beers and we look at the unmet need that was there because everyone else was chasing habanero, watermelon, goza, or they were making yet another juicy IPA. And then all of a sudden we do something like release a Rausch beer, and people are like, oh, wow, you have a Rausch beer? Nobody brews those. And then we sell the whole batch, and we're like, wow, the beer people told us no one would buy. Like, we should have made double the amount.
If you keep doing the same thing over and over again and you're getting the same results, it's like the definition of insanity. If you're not increasing in sales, you have to check out, okay, well, why am I still making this beer? I love it. I think it's excellent, but nobody's buying it. So either figure out why nobody's buying it or eliminate it and make something else.
Brew to orders. Don't brew unless there's somewhere for it to go. That's a big problem for some larger breweries. They brew and brew and brew, and then it doesn't have a home. And then it dies in a warehouse or a cooler or a shelf somewhere.
The breweries who are able to stay the most relevant, they have an attention to detail to everything, not just the quality of the beer and how good the beer is. That's part of it, it's one aspect, but it's also to their brand and their image and what their brand stands for and the message that their brand conveys to their consumers.
Keys to staying relevant. Well, you start with making great beer, right? You need the quality to be relevant. After that, being in touch with your audience. Every brewer who's pulled me aside, whether they were planning a brewery or thinking about planning a brewery, I've always said, make yourself important to your community. Those are the folks that are going to support you at the start, and they are the ones that control your opportunities, really, because if you do good things for them, they're going to allow you to grow and encourage you to grow. If you don't get it right with them, the opportunities don't unfold.
The key thing to me is to not let your customers down from a trust perspective. We want to make sure the beer's awesome and consistent. So when they go and grab a Trogs, they know that Perpetual is going to taste like Perpetual. We're going to keep it fresh. We're going to brew it the same way. We're going to make sure we have the ingredients that we wanted every single time. It's going to be Trogy. We're going to keep our promise that way. First, and then second, what's new and what's next is what's fun for us, that creating these new taste experiences. That's super fun for us, but also for our customers. So that works well, with a backstop for Troegenator and Perpetual being those beers that I've grabbed or they've grabbed for the last 15 years. And it's the same beer. It's the standby. It's in the back of the fridge. It's, I can always try something new and then go back and grab a Troegenator because I know it's going to be awesome.
Good, right?
Did you hit it?
I think so. Right on the time. Look at
What can I get for you?
I don't know. What would you recommend?
We have a couple of hazy IPAs.
Can you tell me what a cream ale is? Yeah, cream ale is a beer made with...
I like something a little bit heavier, a little bit darker. We have a couple of stouts on tap right now.
Do you like sours by any chance? I do. Okay, cool. So we have 3 sours.
Beer in general is fun because there are so many different styles, and trends in beer fluctuate. However, as the industry changes and as beer adopts the official new styles, such as a New England style IPA, or you look at these breweries that are implementing these sour programs or wild programs, I think what's trending is diversity and uniqueness.
I think creating styles is kind of the next new thing. The New England IPA is a great example of that. That was something that a few breweries in a very certain geographic region kind of came up with and said, this is how we're doing beer now. Even though it didn't necessarily fit into a specific style, they saw what the customer was asking for, and that's what they produced. And now, a few short years later, it's now considered a legitimate style.
The one trend that everyone always talks about now is New England IPA, and I can tell you that we will never brew one. I don't even think we're capable of brewing one. I mean, I'm drinking this Pilsner right now that if it wasn't a condensation, I mean, you'd be able to see right through it. To make a really big, cloudy, yeasty IPA would go against, I think, a lot of what we do here.
I rinse. I'm in the hate category of New England IPA. I think the flavor is amazing, but I don't know why we're trying to intentionally just create a glass of orange juice, milky, whatever. We've all been talking as a group about this and have decided that we should probably give a go at it. So, again, market forces plus staff and my ego needs to be set aside. So we'll eventually make that, yeah.
I purposely wanted to be a hop-forward brewery that was doing, a different style, a hazy, juicy style of IPA. I wasn't going to go away from that. Like, that's what I wanted to do. That's what I was going to do, and I was going to make it work. But I've been surprised at how positive the reception has been and how many people we do have come out for can releases and how many people really do love our beer. And I brew for me, but I brew for everybody, and I want to open people's eyes to what an IPA or a pale ale can be, or a beer in general.
As far as beer trends go, there's so many things we've been wanting to do for so many years. I mean, it took us 15 years to start making sour beers that we can actually get out into the world. Maybe if that's following a trend, we're on the 15-year trend, I don't know.
15 years behind a trend?
Behind the trend? Yeah, we wait until it's off the bandwagon and then old, and then we do it.
Yeah, but that's also part of what our scratch system or our scratch beer series can do. I mean, that gives us the flexibility to try different ingredients and brewing techniques. So we might not have a New England IPA today, but we'll probably have a Pennsylvania IPA tomorrow, right?
Trends are huge. You can decide to go against the trend and do something else, but your sales are going to suffer. Potentially your reputation could suffer saying, well, they're not trying anything new. I go out and I drink beers. I try and figure out what other people are doing, what's working, what's not working. Did they do a good job of it? Did they not do a good job of it? Is it something that I would want to try and replicate my own version of?
We have a lot of beer fans that work here, so we go out to bars, we try beers. On Fridays, you might find us sitting out, trying different beers from different places. It's kind of getting an idea of what's going on in the market. It's not exactly like we look at the Nielsen report and see what the best-selling beers are and make one of those, but we have to make something that people want, and those wants change constantly.
I think right now is a crazy time. The craft beer customer is incredibly promiscuous, and it's going to be really interesting to see where they settle, if they ever do.
So what goes into naming a beer?
Not a lot of effort.
Naming our beers. Am I talking in the mic? It's usually involving beer.
Naming beers is always fun. The more we drink, the better our names.
Sprinkles, Mick, fluff and stuff.
Sometimes you don't have a name and you have some beers and then a name. sort of comes up.
Our first IPA is an English-style IPA that we call Double Rainbow. On the first day we brewed it, they rolled up the door in the brewery, and there was literally a Double Rainbow landing in the lot behind us, and we said, I guess that beer just named itself. So.
It's all in the details.
Sometimes it comes down to, it would be neat to hear somebody order a beer with this name.
This is Sexy Goodies. I just thought it was a stupid name, and then I wrote it on the board, and then it became a beer.
It's absurd. Process for naming a beer, that's best done on an afternoon when we can have a few beers. It loosens your mind, and you just start throwing out ideas. So, 90% of them are terrible, but, that's the way it goes. The only way to come up with something unique is to be bizarre and off the wall, but whatever works. Good enough.
I can't chug beer to save my life.
These are exciting times. The world's largest beer manufacturers care about craft beer. We made this happen, we being the brewers and the audience. Now, that's like charging the hill, fighting the battle, winning the hill, only to get to the top and look down the other side and see the artillery lined up against you, being really, really scary. So I don't think any of us are intimidated, but the fact that the world's largest breweries have gotten into our community, literally infiltrated our community by purchasing what I like to call formerly legitimate craft breweries, that's a game changer. So as we looked around us, we saw the opportunity to pull together breweries who were like-minded, beginning with Southern Tier. And together, I think there's things that we can do to withstand the forces of these large breweries.
Our approach was, as we grow, was let's kind of band together with with at least one other brewery, right? This is Victory, and being able to kind of share some services, right? So we're in the beer business, we really get a kick out of making beer, but it's a business, right? And so a lot of things that go along with that, and those are things like accounting and marketing and HR and these things that we know are important and essential, but don't stir our blood like brewing. By both having our own sort of separate identities, sharing some services and having some partnerships that allow us to compete in an incredibly competitive marketplace without going down the road of looking for a buyout or be purchased by a larger brewery, which is we want to keep ourselves independent.
The independent ownership of a Pennsylvania brewery is significant. You want to know that this brewery is impacting the local economy. This brewery are people from your community. It's not some big, massive conglomerate that's based in a foreign country. Drinking Pennsylvania beer, 9 times out of 10, you're supporting your local brewer. You're impacting your local economy. You're having a place to go that supports community efforts. Independent brewing is significant because it maintains quality, it maintains consistency. And when massive conglomerates take over your beer, you don't know what's going in that can.
These breweries that are being purchased for millions of dollars, yes, they're getting rich quick, but eventually their brand is going to go down because the large companies are really interested in the bottom line and they're going to promote their beers first. It's challenging right now because they're selling the beers a lot less than what we need for our beers, and we need the money. Every penny that we charge for our beers, we're not making a lot of money. We need it because we can't buy in bulk, so our ingredients cost more. We just have to preach and stay together as a craft beer united organization just to promote what we're doing. The next couple years are going to be just very interesting, I should say.
As far as what's next in craft beer, I think that this is already happening, but hyper local. We're kind of already there, but I think it's just going to continue as consumers become more educated and consumers, go into places where breweries are. You're just going to be serving primarily a very, very local market, a neighborhood, and that's how small breweries can survive, and that's how breweries can also continue to grow.
I think the future of the industry for me, for the brewing industry, is not big breweries that put their beer in cans and bottles, but it's neighborhood pubs, because it's just like a bar on your corner street that if you like it, you're gonna go there again and again. So I think brew pubs have a lot more growth potential in the industry, and I think we're gonna start seeing a lot more of them, small little pubs.
If you look at the history of beer pre-Prohibition, I mean, every town had several breweries, and that's the beer that you drank because that's where you lived. I think there's room for a lot of brands out there because people want the local beer.
I think you'll see a lot of these smaller breweries, maintaining the small local aspect and not trying to grow into distribution, with the PA laws changing and having the availability to have several different venues.
This is a really interesting timestamp in where the craft beer industry is. Because craft beer is on a much bigger platform, different business models can exist now. And like before, distribution was the only way and you had to get a certain size. Now you can have a tiny little tap room, do 500 barrels a year and be completely happy and have that.
It's going to be more and more difficult for smaller breweries of my size, to grow and to be able to find success in markets that are not their home market. Markets outside of their reach. Really, your success is going to be found right in your own backyard.
What we're seeing now is people have a vision and people have an idea of what beers they want to do, and focusing on a specific style set. There are just farmhouse breweries opening now. There are just New England IPA style breweries opening now. That's fantastic because that just creates that diverse landscape that we lost prior to Prohibition.
Well, I think the most exciting thing right now, for 20 years I made micro beers, but not with local ingredients because there weren't any. And now we have micro malteries and hop growers. And for the first time, we can actually make local beer with local ingredients. So for me, that's the next step, is actually to make local beer with local ingredients and really make it a truly local product.
I think people appreciate the fact that we do acquire products that are local. Philadelphia and local Pennsylvania has just so many cheesemakers and mushrooms and all these great things. So the more ingredients and more produce that we can get locally, the better. I mean, we'd love to support our local farms.
Well, the passion for local ingredients, it's supporting the people in our community that in turn support us. It's a closed loop and it's a feel-good thing. And not only that, you get the best, freshest ingredients you could work with. It just makes sense on many levels.
The future plans for Erie Ale Works is just cement ourselves as a staple in the community, as a quality place to get a really nice beer, to come with your friends, to support the local economy, and to be a part of kind of Erie's resurgence back into industrial relevancy as all of us small businesses come together to kind of backfill the manufacturing jobs that have left. We want to be a part of that.
What's next for us? Global domination.
Oh,
The best thing about being in the beer industry in Pennsylvania is the fact that we are a true beer state. We house everybody from startups from last week to the oldest brewery in America right here. I mean, I think there's something to be said about the culture in Pennsylvania surrounding beer. It's entrenched in us, it's always been a part of our lives, and it definitely has a following and a commitment, from everybody who lives here.
Pennsylvania is a very unique place, I think, for beer. The one thing I've always marveled at is we have this lager heritage that is just so resilient. It survived Prohibition with the Yuengling Brewery. Carol Stoudt came on the scene and, firmly planted the flag for lagers out in, central Pennsylvania. We've got Straub, we've got all these heritage brands. So I think that Pennsylvania presents a unique opportunity for brewers to reflect on heritage and tradition and what the public consumers like to drink, and then gives them tremendous runway to go forward into any other opportunity, whether it be sours, barrel aged. So I think that foundation of respect and attention for lager beers, the foundation of mass-produced beers, in essence, is a good one because it gives us a basis to experiment off of in all directions.
I think something that makes beer in Pennsylvania unique is we respect the past here, and we're proud to say that we grew up on Yuengling lager and that we still drink Stout's pills on a regular basis, which I do. But we're proud to tell people about all of the new spots that are popping up. Pennsylvania is now the state that produces more beer than any other state. I mean, that's pretty incredible. That's special, and it's not only good for our economy, but it's also pretty awesome for a beer drinker.
There's a lot of states that have restrictions as to who you can sell to, how you can sell, what size you need to be, and part of that is those laws prohibit profit if you're under a certain size, and PA doesn't have that. So if you want to open a half-barrel brewery and sell out of a really small tap room, you're able to do that if you go through the licensing process. So that means that there's a lot of people that can be home brewers and kind of take that next step in whatever manner they see fit.
Pennsylvania is a very unique state for craft beer. We're well positioned, we have fantastic agriculture, we're in between 3 major cities in Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, and New York. Our trucking lanes are wide open, we have excellent water, and we have some of the best mindsets as far as the brewing industry is concerned. I mean, clearly Pennsylvania has become the Bavaria of the West.
We have so many different kinds of agriculture. You name it, we grow it in Pennsylvania with our temperate climate. A lot of the ingredients that a brewer might be looking for a special local brew can be found within their own community. Number one ingredient in beer is water, and we have an abundance of fresh, clean water in Pennsylvania.
We get all this fantastic mountain water runoff. Our mineral content is amazing. We were actually talking with the distributor down in Texas to see if we want to go that route, and that distributor brought some of our beers down and sampled it with some other Texas breweries, and even they said, we can't do this because our water quality is nowhere near what it is in Pennsylvania. I think that's why we have such a good concentration of breweries, is our water is just fantastic.
The thing that makes Pennsylvania beer community most unique is the quality of the beer. I travel a lot, I visit other places, I'm trying to learn, but the quality across the board of Pennsylvania brewers rivals anybody. Portland, Denver, Pacific Northwest, Texas, we rival them all. And I'll tell you, I think we make some of the best beer in the world.
Dark Saison. Dark Saison is a strange idea, but Saison in itself is a very fluid beer style. We talk beer. We talk the flavor of beer, the deliciousness of it all the time. We talk about the ingredients. We geek out on the IBUs and all of the components of it. But I think the thing that's most marvelous is that for those of us who produce it, for those of us who sell it, for those of us who consume it, we're actually all taking part in a cultural phenomenon. It's really not about the liquid and the way it tastes. It's really the opportunity to have conversations, to have dialogue, to talk about the possibilities of beer, the past of beer. So for me, the most fascinating creation that we've been able to create here within Pennsylvania and all the markets we serve is we've been able to create a cultural change. So I think that if you look at the craft beer phenomenon, we've accomplished many important things culturally, but one of them is we have taken beer out of the shadows and brought it into the light.
I love making beer. I always have. Making beer is the easy part and the fun part.
We make beer. This is a fun industry. It's a bit of a dream job for me because I get to drink beer and talk to people for a living, which is not the worst thing in the world.
We like to meet people and socialize with them, so that's why we're here. That's what we do. That's our thing.
In life, I think there's a few things that you get, and one of them is you get something for your hard work. And if it's anything that I could put a finger on, I'd say it's watching somebody smile while they're enjoying our place, or watching them smile when they're drinking one of our beers, because that's really what it's all about.
Beer makes people happy, so that was kind of one of the reasons I got into the industry.
I've actually made a lot of friends in the industry, and I mean that's really the best part. Just the relationships that you build within the craft beer community.
It's just a kind of a big, fun group of people drinking beer, and you can't really beat that.
The best part is working with those guys. I've never met a cooler group of people than brewers. They're just awesome folks.
Brotherly love.
Exactly. There you go.
We love it. Like, it's so much fun, you know? Like, people actually do this for a living and get to have fun and, like, drink beer and make beer.
We're here to drink beer and relax. Forget about life for a few minutes.
Lighten up, enjoy life, and craft beer is a great part of that.
Craft beer is here to stay and is leading the whole industry. And it's an awesome thing that we've done.
Sure. Cheers.
Cheers. You're great. That was awesome. Thank you. Cheers.
Salud.
Thank you. Cheers.
What's our brewing philosophy? It sounds so official.
Probably closer to 60-40 right now, in-house to outhouse. Not outhouse, but you know what I mean.
Ooh, that's a great question. I should know that one.
I think I need a drink.
That's a great question.
I don't know how to answer this one.
I lost my train of thought, sorry.
Does that answer your question?
Sorry. Sorry. Fuck.
Let me start that over. You guys are editing this anyway, so.
What was the question?
I'm actually, part seer, part-time clown.
My role at Noblestein is the doer brewer.
And I am the secretary.
And he wears an awesome skirt.
Does that make sense? Yeah, that makes sense, sure.
I'm already at the maximum level, all comfortable. What's the difference?
What do you do with these things?
I can't. I hate this shit. I really do.
Is my mustache all even?
Feels like my cheeks are really warm. Is it the beer?
I'm really sweaty. Don't. I just looked at it.
Ignore this. Ignore that.
Does it really steal your soul?
I don't know.
If you keep that beer a little closer to you, it'll be in the shop.
It's not usually where I hold my beer.
Should we drink it or should we not drink it so it looks consistent?
I'm gonna drink it.
It's all in the details.
Is that gonna be in a gag reel?
No fucking shit.
Sorry about that.
We find it. Sorry.
Sorry.
I think now, let me turn that off.
Well, the mash is over. Why? I'm sorry. Purely. But, oh, jeez. And there's the light out.
I'm waiting for it's like the gag reel when like the boom just falls down.
English style bitter.
Constantly, and all of that. No.
Ron, can you close that door? Ron.
It's pretty slow playing.
Alex, I get it. Do something quick, run, hurry.
Hate when that happens.
One shot. One
That's my dog.
Sorry. We got animals coming in here.
There, so you got somebody, and Tom likes beer too.
Goes back. Oh, excuse me. I apologize.
Tom was farting, by the way. Make sure you put the whole bit about how we smell in the piece. Make sure that makes the.
I hope you can use some of that.
I don't know what we said.
It's horrible.
I need another beer. I need another beer.
Do I let him get any words in?
No, I'm good. Well, I drank almost 2 beers and you've had a handful.
That's because I'm too busy doing the.
I blacked out.
You want to do it again?
You got me on camera for a while. That's probably the longest interview I've ever been on camera for.
Put your fly up now.